In our discovery of European natural sites, we are taking you to Belgium and one of the most industrialised and densely populated regions in the continent, the heart of Wallonia. Almost 2 centuries ago, a canal was dug out to allow barges to transport coal from Charleroi to Brussels. Over the years, the construction has been transformed to enable the passage of larger barges. The many locks which enabled travel over different ground levels were replaced by deep trenches. The regional authorities were wise enough not to eradicate the abandoned trenches of the old canal. Nature was very quick to reclaim what had once been hers, and it has been colonised by an abundant, varied fauna and flora, which we invite you to discover. Winter is not quite over when coots are already starting to build their nests. They fight and chase after one another on the water to set their respective territorial boundaries. Nests are made from twigs and vegetation. They're attached to low branches of trees on the canal bank or built on high ledges to make them inaccessible to predators. Both parents sit on the eggs and take turns on the nest. The young are immediately able to accompany their parents on the water. They only come back to the nest to rest and spend the night. The parents dive to search for food. Both birds are needed to satisfy the chicks' insatiable appetites. The fledglings grow quickly. After a month, they can feed themselves. They'll still remain for a time on the territory of their parents, who've begun a new brood. Just like the coots, great cormorants don't wait for the end of winter to begin to nest. Nests are made from twigs and are attached very high in the poplars. Some birds have started to brood, while others are still in the preliminary phases and are performing a display on their nests. Eggs hatch around the end of March. One parent remains on the nest to keep the chicks warm while the other goes fishing. This species only eat fish. When one parent returns, the young hassle it until the adult opens its beak. Then a chick plunges its head into the gullet to retrieve the pre-digested food. There's a heronry alongside the cormorant colony. The common grey herons begin to nest at the same time as the cormorants. They've selected thick larch foliage in whose branches their nests are well hidden. From mid-February, the birds strengthen their nests from the previous year or build new ones on which they will display. The birds come and go, making a lot of noise. When the herons and cormorants begin to nest, common frogs emerge from hibernation. They leave the shelters where they spent winter and head for the old canal to mate and spawn. To avoid animals from being run over on the canal towpaths, the local authorities install barriers and road signs to warn of their presence, inviting any passers-by to watch out for them. Frogs linger in the marshes located near the canal. Herons know about these places and they gather for a seasonal banquet. Sometimes there are over 50 assembled in one field to wait for the amphibians. In March, mute swans settle on the territory where they will nest. There are a few couples. Numbers vary every year and the territories are always at a good distance from one another. Cygnets swim next to their parents. They feed on aquatic plants. The family will remain together until the end of autumn. The first nesting grebes arrive around mid-March. Couples form. This bird has no sexual dimorphism, and it's impossible to distinguish the male from the female. For a few days, the couple will display in a spectacular fashion. The birds are face to face on the water. With their necks erect, they shake their heads rhythmically from right to left, left to right. They swim side by side, and then, once again face to face, they return to their head shaking. After this dance, the birds attend to building their floating nest. Some of them moor it to low branches which overhang the water, others to aquatic plants such as water lilies. The grebes will replenish it with plants during the nesting period to keep it from slowly sinking. Mating takes place on the borders of the nest. One clutch usually has 3 or 4 large white eggs. The birds begin to hatch before the clutch is complete. Both members of the pair take a share of sitting on the eggs. They swap places on the nest every 2 or 3 hours. While one partner remains on the eggs and arranges the edges of the nest, the other goes fishing for food. When the eggs hatch, the chicks climb onto the back of one of the parents. They make their first journey on the water as passengers. Even when they grow bigger and can swim by themselves, they will regularly ride like this, resting on the adults' backs. The great crested grebe is a pescatarian. It catches fish by diving underwater. While one parent transports the little ones around on the surface, the other fishes to feed them. The chicks swallow the prey whole, even those of a good size. They can't digest the bones and large scales, so their parents give them small feathers to swallow, which cover them to form pellets which are regurgitated. There's a very large mallard population at the canal during the entire year. The mother duck looks after the little ones on her own. From the moment they're born, the ducklings are able to swim and find their own food. It's common for families to count a good 10 ducklings or so. Despite sad blows that predators such as heron as well as large pike can give to their numbers, quite a few of them will grow into adults. The waters of the old canal are replete with fish. When the carp are spawning, you can see them swimming at the surface amongst the water plants. They're easy to spot due to the great splashing of their tails. Like the young coots, the moorhen chicks are little balls of black down which are able to swim and to follow their parents very quickly after hatching. Their presence is far more discreet than that of the coots. Dragonflies and damselflies have colonised the old canal. During sunny days you can spot them on the bank's vegetation or in fast flight above the water's surface. These predators begin their lives underwater. Their larvae spend 1 or 2 years here. They feed on worms, water insects, as well as tadpoles and little fish. In the warm season, the larvae reach maturity and leave the water to attach themselves to a plant or anything else which gives suitable support. The insect punctures its old skin and extracts itself from the exoskeleton. Its wings unfold. The wings become transparent and the body colours. The dragonfly flies away, leaving its exoskeleton behind. The metamorphosis is complete. The scarce chaser, which was becoming very rare in Belgium, has found an ideal biotope here, and it's far from being alone. Broad-bodied chasers, emperor dragonflies, blue-tailed damselflies, and many more species can be observed from the beginning of spring until autumn. Green frogs are more sensitive to cold than their cousins, the common frogs. They don't begin to come out until around the beginning of April. They sing to attract a partner with a view to reproduction. Their croaking can be heard from afar. They stop croaking as soon as a succulent dragonfly flies within reach. Pied wagtails arrive at the beginning of spring. European grey wagtails just a little while afterwards. They build their nests in cavities of the canal banks, where they find a profusion of insects to eat and feed their chicks with. A few years ago, terrapins were a commercial success. They'd be bought measuring only 4 or 5 centimetres in diameter, but those who survived captivity in aquariums grew and quickly became too big. Many were released into ponds, rivers, and also the canal. They spent winter asleep, buried in the silt. As soon as they wake up from hibernation, they warm themselves in the sun's rays. As all reptiles, they need a dose of exterior heat to regulate their body temperature so they can get on with their day-to-day activities. Summer is here. A few pairs of little grebes nest on the old canal. Their presence is very discreet. At the slightest warning, they dive and disappear under the water. It's difficult or almost impossible to predict where they'll resurface to dive again just as quickly. They feed on insects and larvae in particular, as well as small fish that they catch when diving. The young moorhens have grown well. Their parents no longer go with them, and each one lives their life on their own. A family of barn owls have set up home in the roofing of an old lockmaster's house. Despite the racket coming from a heron and cormorant colony which is close by, you can still hear the hissing. It's the young calling to their parents in the hope of being fed. Kingfishers nest in a burrow that they dig into the banks of rivers and ponds. The canal bank composition doesn't allow them to do this. They're nonetheless present in the area. They nest in the banks of the Sam River, which is very close, but the fish-filled waters of the old canal are an ideal hunting ground. Dragonflies hunt insects to eat, which fly above the water. It's on the lookout on a plant or stick. As soon as prey is spotted, it hurtles onto it. With or without its prey, it returns to its post to begin hunting again. Males are looking for females to mate with. Once a partner has been found, the male hangs onto her firmly. He won't let her go until the eggs have been laid. The insects are in a frenzy during mating season, and you can observe feverish mating and egg laying all over the canal surface. Despite its appearance, the slowworm is not a snake but a lizard whose limbs disappeared during evolution. It's present along the canal banks where it finds numerous hiding places. This burrowing animal spends much of its time underground, but it can easily be observed warming itself in the sun or hunting for worms, slugs and insects to eat. The surroundings of the disused stone quarry located just by the canal are one of the favourite sites of the grass snake. But its presence is well concealed. A moult on the bank is proof that it's here. The grass snake mainly eats amphibians and small fish that it catches while swimming. This is how you can observe it for longer, except if it decides to dive and disappear into the aquatic vegetation. Autumn is setting in. Young herons born near the canal have not yet left to discover other territories. They mix with other resident adults and are easy to see along the banks. Some are perched on the ruins of the disused pontoons, others are motionless on the bank. One has established its territory around a weighbridge, the Pont de l'Origine. This has become its favourite perch. The herons spend a lot of time on the water's edge, on the lookout for fish swimming past. Some of them don't mind getting their feet wet and hunt while roaming through the waters. The heron's neck stretches down in a flash to catch its prey. Sometimes the fish escapes the bird and its beak resurfaces empty. Other times they catch a few prey in one go. Could there be some sort of solidarity among fish lovers? The fact is that some heron aren't afraid of fishermen and settle not far away. It has to be said that as much as fishermen hate cormorants, they seem to like heron. Who knows why? Black-headed gulls have returned from their nesting sites. They form noisy flocks of many scores of individuals. They cohabit with other birds on the canal, where they'll spend winter. Egyptian geese have African origins. They were introduced to Europe over 30 years ago. Their aggressiveness and impact on local fauna has put them on the blacklist of invasive species. It's the same phenomenon with Canada geese, who originate from North America. Campaigns aiming to limit populations of these two geese have been organised. They're no longer resident throughout the entire year on the canal, but at the end of autumn and in winter, they still sometimes make an appearance. Mist floats above the canal waters and swathes the landscape. The winter atmosphere becomes ghostly and mysterious. The common grey heron spends its time on the canal banks throughout the entire year. Between two fishing sessions, it remains motionless on the banks or in tree branches beside the river. It thus avoids wasting energy. Like the heron, the great cormorant is a permanent resident on the canal. It floats with just a small part of its body and long neck above the surface. It dives to catch fish and swims underwater using only its webbed feet and not the wings as other diving birds do. It can't stay in the water too long as it doesn't have an oil gland under its rump to secrete a liquid to waterproof the plumage as other waterfowl do. Soaking wet feathers increase its weight, helping it to dive down. But after a while it must leave the water and dry its feathers so as not to sink definitively. This is why it remains perched for long periods of time, its wings open to the wind in the branches of trees. The abundant aquatic vegetation which covers the canal waters has disappeared, and there's much less on the banks. Food has become rarer. There's no more delicious duckweed that the mallards gleaned from the surface. They have to go underwater to find food now. They gather together near holes in the iced water. It's the first winter for this young swan who's discovering the ice and the difficulties in walking on such a slippery surface. Swan pairs have the same partner for life. This pair is confined to a patch of water where there's a hole in the ice. The birds are reflected on the ice. With the arrival of winter, the coots become a little less aggressive. They group together, sometimes with as many as a few score individuals. Their restlessness is a sharp contrast to the calm of the swans with whom they share the waterways. They're clumsy as they move around on the frozen surface of the canal. The moorhen finds the exercise no easier. The ice is not only a disadvantage for moving around on, food is more difficult to find, and too long a period of starvation caused by a freeze can wipe out a population in a single winter. During the evening of the warmer season, bats hunt for insects above the waterways. It's not easy to see them. In winter, they shelter to hibernate in places where the temperature and humidity levels remain constant. The Godarville Tunnel, a former underground passage for barges, is ideal. The water which permeates through the earth and the tunnel arch creates curtains of concretions, much like in a cave. Whiskered, natterers and long-eared bats shelter between the folds of these drapes. To avoid disturbing them during hibernation, access to the tunnel is forbidden. At the end of the day, various flocks of gulls gather. They bathe and cry noisily before heading to bed. The common teal is a small duck which nests in the north of Europe. They only come here to spend winter. They form noisy flocks which are easy to distinguish by characteristic little whistling noises that they make. They divide their time between looking for food and resting on the ice. The godwall mixes with common teals and mallards. They don't often nest in Wallonia and only visit the old canal to wait for the return of the warmer season. The female looks very much like a mallard. It's not easy to distinguish one from the other when they congregate in mixed flocks. The tufted duck is a small diving duck which also visits us from the north. They form groups on the waterways where they spend winter. They find small shellfish in the silt which make up most of their meals. The common merganser arrives in midwinter. It lives in northern countries. This diving duck mainly eats fish. They're very shy and can only be observed from afar. A few pairs spend some weeks on the canal and then return very quickly to the north. Apart from these regular winter visitors, there are others which are very unexpected. A female eider duck moves around the waterways. This sea duck adventures only rarely this far into the interior. She dives underwater for quite long periods in search of small mollusks to feed on. She stays for a few weeks in the company of mallards and coots and then disappears on one fine morning just as mysteriously as she appeared. Even more surprising, the black swan originates from the Australian continent. It was introduced to Europe as an ornamental bird. Some specimens escaped from zoos in which they were confined and found their way to freedom. One settled on the canal near to the bridge, the Pont de l'Origine. It stayed there for over a month before flying away towards new horizons. The water's surface is covered with a thin skin of ice. Under the watchful eye of other occupants of the surroundings, the swan discovers the ice, its difficulties of manoeuvre, and the traps it sets. The black swan is a herbivore and finds plenty of food on the banks. They peacefully cohabit with other birds. Herons, coots, moorhens and mallards. A pair of common shell duck have settled on a pond in the nature reserve which borders the old canal. This is another species of duck which normally prefers the sea coast. They'll stay for a few weeks or even go as far as mating just before the arrival of spring. Will they settle here and nest? And then, one morning, they both disappear. A few years were enough for nature to reclaim its rightful place and transform a former industrial site into a haven of peace. Today, this site shelters a very varied fauna and flora. Respectful management allows it to flourish undisturbed and to offer each of us a spectacular wildlife show.